Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, we have Kevin Ritter from Timeless Kitchen Cabinetry. Thanks for joining me today, Kevin.
Oh, sure. No problem, Danielle.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, my dad was a furniture maker in the 90s. He specialized in antique reproduction furniture, I guess the main construction of that was using old lumber a little bit longer before the reclaimed lumber craze began.
Was a thing, yeah.
We didn't call it reclaimed, we just called it antique lumber at the time. So, but it was the easiest way to get the look and feel of the furniture that he was building. So I kind of grew up in that and learned basic woodworking skills. When I was 15, I guess, was the next stage that sort of moved us forward closer to what we're doing now. I was 15. My parents bought a 1790s stone farmhouse in Upper Euclid Township in Pennsylvania, and we restored the house mostly ourselves. Learned a lot about old homes, and that's kind of when my interest in old homes began. And at about the same time, the furniture business was taking off. And started doing shows in different parts of the country, and that really just really took off after that. So I went away to college and worked in a series of unfulfilling jobs for a couple of years after college, and I went back to work for Bryce in the year 2000. We did a lot of shows up into New England, down to Virginia, out to Illinois, and kind of covered that region for a number of years, mostly building dining tables, beds, all shapes and sizes of reproduction cabinets. But we did get a few inquiries into doing kitchen cabinets based on our furniture. And ironically, I fought it tooth and nail for a while. I thought we were not really set up to do kitchen cabinets, but we did a few. We did a few that worked really well, and so there was more interest after that. And so about 2005, I set up my own shop to specialize in kitchen cabinets, and that's kind of where it took off from.
Okay, very interesting. So the furniture and the living in an older home, then that really kind of set you up to be drawn into the traditional cabinetry. Was that kind of your why? Why
it really
you chose
was.
That, or yeah.
Yeah, and we really, I guess as a kid growing up around, our whole house is full of primitive painted antiques. I really just developed this appreciation for the finishes, especially in the woods. Using the old, we've used old granary boards from the granaries in the barns, and just some of the textures and the appearance of some of those patinas are just amazing. And so it's hard to recreate that for modern kitchen cabinets, but that was kind of our inspiration. We don't get all the way there. But that's definitely our inspiration. And traditional cabinets just seem like the way to go for kitchens for old homes. I think a lot of times there are some bad choices made, when it comes to renovating an old home. So yeah, I think traditional cabinetry is most appropriate for those types of situations.
Yeah, I agree. So tell me about Timeless Kitchen Cabinetry.
Well, we have operated as a one-man operation off and on for, I guess, 16 years now. I've taken on a part-time employee periodically, but because of being a small shop, we really only do about 10 to 12 projects a year. We spend a lot of time on each job, a lot of time on the finishes specifically. Especially, we don't do 100% of our work in old homes, but that is our target. But when we do have those jobs, we definitely we spend a lot of time on the finish because everything is done by hand. There's a lot of different steps to get to where we want the cabinets to be. We basically build, I guess I would say, as I said, we don't do 100% historic homes, but I would say 75% is old homes. And then other people that we work with are just people that appreciate period design or want to create the look and feel of an old home in their house. I think early American, this early American style is kind of our bread and butter. But in recent years, we've done a kitchen. My client said, "I just want this to look like a kitchen from the Italian countryside." So we did something a little more in keeping with that idea, and we've done some French country as well. But definitely, our bread and butter has been early American style.
And that was one thing I was going to ask you, was like the different style, not styles, or I guess that is the right word, like the different periods. Like, do you reflect like the period of the home, or do you kind of just stay more like simple and traditional?
No, we try to do. I mean, I think it's pretty. It's very easy to take the cabinetry in a certain direction. By we've got. I was just thinking, in thinking about speaking with you, I was trying to think of the earliest homes we've done, and that's definitely like mid to late 1700s in the Northeast. We've got a client right now that has a place on Elfreth's Alley in Philadelphia, and that's going to be an upcoming project. So that'll be a great project to work on and feature.
Yeah.
But then
those projects are fun, but parking's miserable.
Yeah, no kidding. So we and as a result, we actually moved we relocated from Pennsylvania to Tennessee about 7 years ago, and as part of that move, there's so many old homes up in Pennsylvania and up in New England, but down in Nashville, we've got a lot of communities right in the city that are 1930s bungalows. They're amazing homes. They're just a totally different, period, obviously. But if you're changing door styles, the detail in the door style, you're changing hardware, you're changing the furniture foot detail that's on the furniture style cabinetry that we build, different moldings, different paint colors. It's really not difficult to take the same a cabinet that's constructed the same way, but just with different details on it, to take it to a place where it's a little more appropriate for a different style or different period home.
Yeah, and you mentioned moving to Tennessee, but you're still do travel then, I guess, back to the East Coast for projects, and that's probably easy for you since you can build in the shop and then bring them. Is that so? You're not limited geographically.
We're not limited at all. Our model is actually, even in Pennsylvania, we were basically design, build, and then ship or deliver. We don't actually do installation work. We partner with the contractor on the project to coordinate installation. So that's after we relocated, it made it, we were already sort of modeled that way. So last year we had projects in a mountain home in Flagstaff, Arizona. We've got an upcoming project in Wisconsin that's a chestnut kitchen, and then some historic properties in Pennsylvania. We just shipped one up to your area into Lancaster. So yeah, we ship all over the country. We've got a great shipper, and everything gets we design it first on our software, and we work that design back and forth by email. And then, then we do samples so that the client sees, the door style they chose with the paint finish that they chose. And we don't actually, a lot of jobs we don't actually get on site. But we do have to rely on a contractor to help us get good field dimensions.
Yeah. As you were describing that was what I was seeing as a problem.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness, we've yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's one of the drawbacks of course of working with a cabinet maker that's at some distance. But luckily we try to build these in a way that's going to take into consideration, that things may change in the field a little bit. So we've got we build them so that they can be
putting
modified.
Extra scribe on, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, well, that's interesting. That's the business model is interesting to me because I think that's great that you can kind of just stay in your home base and still service clients around the country. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell me about the company before we start talking about kitchens in general?
No, I think that about covers it. I mean, we try to keep it pretty simple. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So, what are the common mistakes that people make when they're upgrading or replacing cabinetry in an older home?
I think one of the main issues would be that, like we've already touched on a little bit, just the style of the cabinetry. The modern frameless cabinetry is definitely not going to be appropriate for most historic homes. And I think that, one of the other the challenges, I guess, of restoration is budget. And so a lot of times we just saw, as a good example, we saw a beautiful historic home that we'll do a kitchen for later this year. It's up in Douglasville, Pennsylvania, and the house was just perfectly restored in almost every room of the house. And then they had this 1980s modern kitchen. And it just was, it was crazy to see all these photos of this wonderful home, and then this kitchen just didn't fit at all. And I think a lot of times kitchen cabinetry can be pretty expensive, especially custom cabinetry, and that's often what is going to be required for a restoration project. So, that's a lot of times, the frameless cabinetry is going to be a little less expensive, but I think that's just something that happens with budget restraints. One thing I think, we touched on a little bit too, with installation, order of installation, I think can be a mistake, and that's of on the.
I agree with you.
Maybe inside baseball a little bit, but we've had a lot of jobs where, in my opinion, not everybody's going to agree with me on this, but I think the floor should be installed first, and most of the time, fully finished, ready to go, and then covered. I think walls should be painted, almost complete, if not complete, before the cabinets even come in, especially if you're doing like a furniture style look, which is pretty appropriate for these old homes. That's just one of my pet peeves. I think another one would be choice of material. Not necessarily, on the cabinets are going to be wooden, obviously, but the rest of the kitchen. What are we looking at for flooring, for the backsplash, for the countertop, for the plumbing fixtures? I think a lot of times these kitchens don't really come together. It's not just the kitchen cabinets; it's all the other things as well that kind of make these kitchens kind of come together.
The details,
yeah. We had one kitchen. We spent a lot of time on it, and everything was going great, and I wasn't really involved in the. Clients can choose whatever countertop they want. I don't really get involved in that unless I'm asked to, and then I'll definitely give an opinion. But it was a gray countertop that just didn't look like, I think it should look like natural stone in these historic homes. And it looked very institutional. It didn't have a feel of stone at all, and it just it almost ruined the kitchen. And so I think making wise choices when choosing the rest of the materials in the space can be
right.
can be fundamental to achieving these looks in the kitchen that we're shooting for.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I think that sometimes people have a vision of like what, like I am partial to like more simple, to like soapstones, like the busier like stones don't really do anything for me.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So I agree with you that like and I think that they look fine in a more modern house, but you would have never had that in an older building. So yeah.
I totally agree. I'm a big fan of soapstone. Specifically, we worked with Bucks County Soapstone when we were in Pennsylvania, and
they're great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just, in these kitchens, that kind of material just looks better over time. It develops its own patina, and it's just a great. It's a little bit of upkeep, but it's worth it. I think it's worth it in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think most traditional materials require maintenance, but anything that doesn't require maintenance is meant to be thrown away. So I also have issues with that. Do you have any tips for people to avoid some of these mistakes? I guess talking to people that would understand, the design process and maybe I don't know, what do you have any tips for people?
I think if the homeowner isn't really familiar with, the options, I think it's great to talk to a designer or someone that works with the contractor to help, find out what options are and to make some of those choices. I think, a lot of it, just as you mentioned, the natural materials or something that looks as natural as possible is definitely the way to go. If you're, you can spend a lot of time, depending on the period of your home, you can obviously just, visiting historic properties is a good way to go to see what was in those homes, and then either finding something that looks like, the flooring or the countertop material or whatever option you're choosing, finding something that looks like it, or using the authentic product, going with a wood floor that, I've heard a lot of people say, well, you can never use a wood floor in the kitchen, but we do that all the time. And just,
right.
Using something that, you can still get your hands on original antique flooring these days.
Oh, yeah.
And that just goes a long way. It costs a little more, but it really can make the space if you can choose
definitely.
that as an option.
And in a kitchen area, I mean, maybe you need to pick like a more durable finish than, like a traditional wax or something. But other than that, there's no reason that you couldn't use flooring or wooden flooring. I was just thinking we don't do a lot of cabinetry, but we do some. And we had an employee that when I was thinking about common mistakes, like I think that finding a contractor that understands what you're trying to do and is sensitive is, because we had an employee once to come to us and he thought he was going to teach us something new. He's like, "Have you guys ever heard of Euro hinges?" I'm like, "Yes, but we're not using them." So
right.
I just think sometimes like you just have to make sure that everybody's on the same page with what with what the goals are. So what challenges or trends do you see in preservation?
I guess in general, when we approach projects, it's kind of the age-old balancing out form and function. I think we're trying to create kitchens or a kitchen cabinet layout and appearance that is going to be appropriate to the home, but at the same time, we're not using kitchens the same way in 2021 as they did in 1820 or pick a period.
Yeah.
And so I think we've all with the appliances that are panel ready that can accept face panels to disguise them. That's one way that there's a lot of different ways to kind of create that form that we're going for. We try to design in furniture pieces to serve as storage in these kitchens, instead of having wall-to-wall upper cabinets across the entire wall. We'll try to create some more white space and stop the cabinets short, and then maybe there's a furniture piece at the end that is sort of a nod toward an old pantry cabinet or a jelly cupboard or some type of old piece that would have been in an old kitchen.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely one of them. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Of course, budget is always a factor, and unfortunately, like we mentioned, a lot of the good example, the Euro hinges are very inexpensive. But then, if you want to use a face applied hinge that is, again, a nod toward a different period of time, whether it's cast like a brass hinge or cast iron or wrought iron or whatever. A lot of those are handmade. The wrought iron stuff is handmade, and it's going to be a little more expensive. So budget is definitely a challenge with these projects. And I would say, as far as trends go, I don't know. There's so many. It seems like there's a lot of options for finishes these days. And with the quartz countertops now, a lot of those really look like, it's an engineered stone, but a lot of them look like natural stone. It just comes right out of the ground. They've done a lot of amazing things with that material. But it's a great option for some of these kitchen spaces.
Yeah, and that's also sometimes can be a way to save on one thing, kind of a balancing, when you're dealing with budget too.
That's right.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you thought of when we were talking that you want to share that maybe I didn't get a chance to ask you?
One thing, I guess, sort of an approach that I take, which I think would be helpful for a lot of projects. I think sometimes clients get, especially in maybe with historic properties, sometimes we get caught up in like following the rules on making decisions and designing the space and choosing options, and it can be an overwhelming process for some homeowners that haven't done this before or are new to it. And I think sometimes we get hemmed into, well, what's the expectation here, or what's done in all cases in this situation, or what do we choose for this? And the kitchen is such a it's such a it's kind of, I don't know, it's a space in the house that is completely different from everything else, especially the way we use them today. You're cooking your meals there, you're socializing with your family, you're spending a lot of time there, I guess is the point. And it's a utility area as well. Like there's a function there there's a lot of functions that have to happen there every day. You want it to be functional, you want it to be cleanable. And I just think because you're going to be spending a lot of time in the space, I think you should choose, pieces and finishes that you enjoy, that you're going to not get tired of, that are beautiful, that make you want to be in that space. And so I try to, a lot of my clients will ask for advice and maybe need to be steered a little bit, but educated, I guess I should say. But at the end, I always try to get them to say, well, how is this going to look for you? Are you going to appreciate this for the next 20 years? Or, really focus on what you love and what you like to see, what you like to be around, because you're going to be spending a lot of time in that kitchen.
I really agree with that, because I often will ask people, how do you use the space? Like, how do you, because if it's not going to work for you, you're not going to be happy, and you need to, if you're investing the money into it, you need to have something that's going to work. I totally agree with that, and it's not something that can't be undone. So it's not something that's going to damage the building. Which is kind of like what I use to kind of is my gauge of like, is this okay to do within preservation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, did you have any offers for our listeners?
I really don't.
Okay.
We do. I would, if anybody has projects they want to discuss, I'd love to hear about historic properties. And I'm happy to give advice, whether we would do the kitchen cabinets or not. We've got a pretty active account on houzz.com. I'm not sure how many folks use that, but
Okay.
it's houzz.com, and we're just Timeless Kitchen Cabinetry on there. And then that's a good platform for looking at past projects and then asking questions, finding sources, and that type of thing.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And how can our listeners contact you?
Our website is TK Cabinetry, as in Timeless Kitchen, tkcabinetry.com. And you can, folks can email us directly through the contact page on the website. I'm on Instagram. I don't do as much. I'm not as active as I should be. Often we have pieces go right out the door and we don't get photos of them, and then there's nothing to post on Instagram. But I'm timeless _kitchen_cabinetry. That's another way to get in touch to discuss a project. You can send me a message through Instagram. And yeah, that's the best way to get in touch with us.
Okay, well, very good. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And
thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.